So we're going to start with a few introductions, and I've got a funny feeling that on various different computers it's going to be slightly different to what's on mine, but I'm going to start with the person who's on my far left, who's Paul Deemer, and I'll just ask Paul to quickly introduce himself, please. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Teresa. So my name's Paul Deemer, and I'm the Head of Diversity at NHS Employers.
Thanks, Paul. That's lovely. And the next person along is Julie Woolman. So hi, Julie.
Hi, I'm a second-year student at Plymouth University, and I'm studying adult nursing.
Thanks, Julie. My next person along is Derek Barron. Hi, Derek.
Hi, Teresa. I'm Derek Barron. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you absolutely fine.
And I'm the lead nurse in the North Ayrshire Health and Social Care Partnership and Associate Nurse Director in NHS Ayrshire now.
Fab. Thanks for joining us, Derek. And then to my right, but not necessarily to yours, it might be down or this way, is Hannah, who I know will be tweeting away. But if you can quickly say hi, Hannah, that would be amazing. Hannah's gone quiet.
Hannah was talking before.
Very quiet. Okay.
While Hannah's saying, scribbling something madly, shall I introduce myself? Oh no, here we go.
Here we go.
Can't
Chat.
unmute.
She can't. Okay.
If you're stuck on orange, if you just click on one. Okay. Well, perhaps we need to pick.
We'll just move on to Kerry, who is on my far right. So Kerry.
Hi, I'm Kerry Pace. I'm the founder of Diverse Learners. We support students, healthcare students, healthcare practitioners and trusts, raising awareness of dyslexia and dyspraxia, inclusion, diversity, all singing, all dancing, and we'll support you in various different ways, which we'll probably discuss as we go on.
Fab. Okay, so the topic of tonight's webinar and tweet chat is diversity. But before we really get started, I think we just wanted to do a quick couple of poll questions. I might just ask the guys just to minimise their cameras for a moment. That's absolutely fab. And perhaps if we could go to the first poll. I'm not quite sure if I've got control of that, Ray, or have you?
I've got control of the poll, so if you want to this one.
Yeah, that would be lovely, thank you.
So we've got how are you feeling today?
Fab. If you could all just complete the poll before we get started.
Okay, we've got most people completed theirs.
Lovely.
I'm getting feedback on something here. So we've got 20% inspired. 20% Sorry, can you see this?
Yeah, we can see this. Yeah.
You can read it out then.
You can read it out then.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we got 20% of you are quite tired. Nobody's overwhelmed, which is great. A few of you are so-so, but it looks like the majority of you are feeling great or on top of the world. So that's fab. So perhaps if we go to the next question, we just want to know where people are joining in from. Here we go. So where are you coming from today? If you can just complete. And once we've got enough people, we'll kind of move on. Wow, Wow, we've got a lot of Southerners out there today, so that's great. That's probably our wonderful Plymouth cohort, which is amazing. So we're a few in the Midlands, which is great. Nobody's in Wales, so fine, but a few up there in Scotland, which is great. So the next question is just asking you who you are. So if you can just select one of those as to whether you're a qualified nurse, qualified other healthcare professional, a student, or another. Other covers absolutely everything, doesn't it? Oh, great. Okay, so we're mostly student nurses and qualified nurses, so that's wonderful to know, with a few others out there. So. And then our final one before we really get started, we just really want to know if you're on Twitter or not at the moment. And then once we get that one out of the way, then we'll head straight into the discussion. Oh, there's a few people not on Twitter, so but it looks like the majority of you are. So so that's fab. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start by asking a question to our panel about what diversity means to them. So I'm going to go to Paul first. Paul, are you there?
I am, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you absolutely fine. So can you just kind of outline what diversity means to you and your role?
Yeah, okay. So obviously that's a sort of question that I have to think about quite a lot, and it's a sort of question that we discuss, and I say we, various people discuss at various meetings, and it's usually in the context of what's the difference between equality, diversity and inclusion, because they're terms that are used quite frequently together, and people don't very often differentiate. So I've done you another little visual which I'm going to hold up, which is terrible, but there you go.
Hold it still, that's it, equality. Fab.
So equality is, for me, is about being invited to the party. So diversity is about being asked to dance. Inclusion, which is where we're trying to get to in terms of what we do within the NHS, is actually being asked to organise the party. So I don't know if that helps you to sort of understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing way to explain it, Paul. I've never heard it explained that way. I think that's absolutely brilliant. So thank you. So
well.
Yeah, I like it. It's great. Why do we need all this tech? So I'm going to move to Derek now and ask the same question about what diversity means to you, Derek, and your role.
It's a wee bit unfair that I have to follow Paul with all these fabulous graphics, but yeah, I suppose when Kerry and I discussed this a wee while ago at QMU, I was interested in as much learning here tonight as I am about sharing. So I kind of agree about diversity is about individual and how we can support individual people. So it takes person-centred care to right down to what it means for individuals. So what one person with a particular issue would have will not be. So if you take something fairly simple, if you've got a broken, the one person with a broken leg would not need the same person with a broken leg. So what you have to do is to tailor things to what they need and how they need it. So it is about you engage with that individual and about inclusion being at the party as well, because that's very clear about someone else to be involved in it, rather than saying here's a suite of things we've got, pick from that. It's what would you like in the city jar in the first place.
Can I just follow on from that, Teresa, because I think your broken leg analogy is really good. because often I find, as a slight outsider, very much involved in the world of healthcare, but not a healthcare practitioner myself. Everybody else at Diverse Learners is, but I'm a lecturer and the researcher. And the thing for me about the broken leg thing is that often people will get diversity when they talk about palliative care and their patients, but they don't necessarily apply the same empathy, am I going a bit far? I don't know, empathy, thought process to their fellow colleagues. So if you said, okay, we have a person with a broken leg, what might you do? And they might say, oh, we'll get physio, we'll talk to occupational health, we'll try this, oh, that walking stick doesn't work, so we'll try this frame, or that frame doesn't work, so we'll try one with wheels. They're very much about trying lots of different things to maximize the potential of that person. But to their colleagues, they seem to have much less tolerance or understanding, or maybe it's awareness of all the different things that they might need in order to meet the diverse needs of their colleagues or their staff. We're really good at doing it for patients and don't think twice about tools and tech and assistive technology, but not necessarily so aware about how to do that with colleagues. I mean, there's many reasons for that, but for me, for diversity, it needs to also be thinking about not just diversity in our patients, but also diversity in a wider context.
Thanks, Kerry. I think that's really interesting, and I don't know whether it's going to put you on the spot, Julie, but I kind of want to come to you because you're out there quite a lot. You go around to different placements, and how do you feel kind of about what Kerry said? Is that something that you see out there? Do we apply kind of that same sort of thinking to our colleagues as we do for the people we care for? What are your thoughts?
Well, as students, we get taught about equality and diversity as relationships between race, religion, and they come across as that, really. And our workforce in the NHS is very multicultural. It's absolutely fantastic to have that diversity there. But I like the way the broken leg thing, you know, that's a really good way of explaining it. We need to think of everybody's individual needs. It's a race and religion thing, and it's actually, you know, an age thing. Not just with the patients, also within nursing cohorts. You've got old people like me alongside 18 and 20-year-olds, and we all learn differently. We've got people with dyslexia, we've got people with mental health issues, and that is a big diversity thing, and we really need to start thinking about that as a diversity issue, really.
That's funny you should mention that, Julie, because when I first approached, Derek and I had a, I don't know, 45-second chat, about 45-second chat we had as he was running out the door to catch a train about what we wanted to do. And then I pitched it to Teresa, and as I pitched it to Teresa and Paul, I actually said, you know, diversity tends to be, disability tends to be quite low on the diversity agenda. We have quite a strong LGBT voice, we have quite a strong BME, so lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender, BME, black minority ethnic groups. So the important thing about that is that we're not saying that we don't embrace those. What we're saying is that disability tends to get it seems to be much quieter. It's a much more diverse group. It can affect anybody as well. And it's quite interesting that you should say about looking at the age as well, because those are the sort of things that often come under the diversity banner but don't necessarily get as much publicity or have such a large political voice. What do you think, Paul?
Sorry, I'm just unmuted. Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to sort of build on what Julie was saying, and because I sort of work in this area. The conversations that we're having now about diversity in the sort of within the HR profession and across wider as well is about diversity of thought. So I think, you know, what Julie's described in terms of the different silos, which are basically dictated by the Equality Act, because that's where all this stuff comes from. It comes from legislation, essentially. And the Equality Act, if people are familiar with it, lists sort of 9 protected characteristics, some of which Julie described. So age, disability, you know, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, race, sexual orientation, religion, etc. So there's a whole range of things that are covered in the Equality Act. And that's important that we've got that legislative protection. And you know, I'm very proud actually of working in a country like ours, and I say this quite a lot, that has got, I think, the most progressive equality legislation probably in the world, actually, if you look around. So we should be very proud of that, and we should be quite protective of that. But equally, we need to build on that as well, and we need to go beyond just the legislation. And that takes us into the realm of what I was talking about, which is diversity of thought. So that's about having different, not just different faces and different colours and different types of people around the table. It's about having different types of thinking as well.
Can I pick up just a little bit? I think you're right, Paul, and the diversity of thought goes beyond the legislation. I think that's the exciting bit. Right, because the legislation can tell you what to do, but it's not going to change how you think about it. But I wanted to go back ever so slightly for a moment to what Kerry said, and I've just tweeted a blog called The Spoon Theory by Your Kirstiness. Right, so Kirsty is a nurse in Ayrshire now, and she blogged earlier this year, February, and her blog's about how her employer, her team leader, and the team worked around her ulcerative colitis and still do that. Right, so to me that's delivering it. It's not just, yes. Thank you, Paul. So yeah, it's a good, I would say a double act, but it's a quadruple act. So I think that demonstrates exactly what you were saying, Kerry, about our care for colleagues, because that's where you and I started, our caring for colleagues, because sometimes it's easier to do it for an individual patient or those that use our service. Well, of course we should do it for them, no question. But actually, if it means me changing how I work to actually accommodate what a colleague needs, well, hold on a minute, that's a bit personal. You expect me to do that differently. And this team have worked around Kirsty, and I think it's a fab example, and that's why I shared it with you.
Can I just slightly pick you up on your language there, Derek? Only because it's kind of a little thing of mine where, you know, and as a person who has multiple disabilities, is, you know, they've worked around Kirsty. What I would say would be the team has worked together to find some solutions, which is exactly what you're saying, but it's just about, one of my things is about with diversity and thought diversity is about positive language and trying to move away from the deficit model and the medical model. And it's not a criticism at all, it's just another thought for people who are watching the webinar about, you know, because for me, if you told me you're working around me, I would have been going, the problem, am I the difficulty, rather than it's actually the whole team that has to change, like you said, in their way of thinking in order to be a productive multidisciplinary team that communicates really well, ultimately for patient and the patient care.
Okay, yeah, I get your point, although the ultimate point is patient care, but I think you're right, and you think you're right to point it out. Actually, there's nothing wrong with caring for staff either. So when I went to Ayrshire at the beginning, I had a vision statement which was about investing in caring for staff with the ultimate goal, what we deliver for individual people who use our services. So I get, and I understand the language, and I should be careful, yes, as in Kirsty's a problem, because she's not, she's fab, but it's about how the team embrace and deliver together. So yeah, point taken.
Love you.
So just I'm gonna stop you all there, because I'm hoping that Hannah's out there, and we can go to Hannah to just check in on what's happening on Twitter for a second, and hopefully Hannah's speaker will work this time.
Hello, working?
Yes.
Yes, brilliant.
Great.
I figured it out. So on Twitter at the minute, I've got a couple of tweets from people that I just want to read out. So Mark Wheatley 72 says that to him diversity is about embracing and celebrating differences. Mandy Pierce, she feels that diversity is about treating everyone with the same amount of care and compassion. And then Fiona C. McQueen says that we do still have a lot of a way to go in terms of embracing diversity within our colleagues, not to do with patients, just our workforce. And then there was just a couple of people wondering if we could expand a bit on what is meant by diversity of thought.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. That's great. Keep the comments coming via Twitter, and I think that was something that I picked up on in my notes as well. I think I'd certainly like to know a little bit more about diversity of thought. Paul, since you were the first person to mention it, can we come back to you, and perhaps you can explain a little bit more about what's meant by that term and
Okay.
well.
It's tricky. I mean, so I was at a presentation today, which was about inclusive leadership, and there was the presentation was from a number of researchers who've been doing research in the areas of inclusive leadership, and one of the things that they talked about, they highlighted specific aspects of inclusive leadership, and at one point they talked about gender, and they talked about the fact that there is scientific evidence research to show that men and women do think differently, and they then put that into the context of business, and they were looking at for example, the car industry. And there's some research that they quoted and cited, which was about who makes the decisions in a household about who should buy the car. And I think, including myself, most people would have thought that that was the man. If there's a man and a woman in the household, then it might be the man that makes that decision. But the research showed very clearly that 60-40, I think the percentage was, in 60% of cases, it's women who make the choice about cars. So that then should, if that research is known, and the company they were talking about was Ford, and if Ford know that, and if the board at Ford company understand that, then that should be influencing their marketing campaigns, etc., and all the various things that they do to promote their various products. So that, I don't know if that helps or not, but that's an example, if you like, of how thought diversity should work, obviously within a business context rather than a health context. But you can imagine, building on what Kerry was saying earlier, how you can easily apply that into a health context as well.
That certainly helps me. I'm hoping that it helps the people on Twitter.
If it doesn't, just listen. We'll talk about it some more.
Yes.
I'm gonna draw a car as well, Teresa. Is that okay?
Why don't you go the whole hog and draw somebody with a skirt?
Okay.
Challenge those stereotypes.
So
can I just, sorry to interrupt, can I just mention that School for Health Radicals did a whole section on thought diversity in their last lessons, and that was really quite interesting, and they've got quite a few resources as well, so people might want to check out School for Health Radicals.
Okay, that's fab. That's really helpful, Kerry. Thank you. I think that we just need to go to a quick poll now, if we can, Ray. I know Ray's in there in the background, but hopefully we've got a poll question around diversity and oh gosh, here it is. Yes, that's it. Those of you who are listening in this evening, if you could perhaps just vote So the question is, do you know if the organisation you work for or study at has a diversity and equality lead? So
63% voted.
Thanks, Ray.
79, a few more. That should do.
Are we just about there? Fabulous. So hopefully we'll see the answers there. So 18% have said yes, that they've been in contact with them, so that's amazing. 41% said yes, that they've had no contact with them. Okay. 12% that said no, and 29% said I don't know. So those are some quite interesting statistics from our little group of people there. I think, you know, the next question that comes to my mind really, and I know this is probably diversifying slightly from the plan that we had, but why is that role important? So why is it important to have somebody around equality and diversity within your workplace? And I think I'm going to go to Kerry to ask that to start with. Kerry, are you there? I can see you. Can't hear you though.
Yeah. Nice signing for all those sorts of people out there. That was my job in a previous life, a sign language interpreter. So, well, I think it's for me. See, I can see it from lots of different points of view. So I can see it as a person who has a disability who didn't find out they had a disability until 10 years ago, and then kind of acquired about 6 or 7, it feels. But also as somebody who supports people who have a disability in the workplace or at university. And for me, it's about having a voice. It's about having somebody who understands. It's about having difficult conversations on your behalf, perhaps, because there's power relationships and power inequalities within the health service. So if you've got to kind of say, you know, I would like to be having this particular adjustment, and you have a record, an assessment that says you should have that adjustment, and then for some reason somebody who's in a position of power then says, I'm not having given you that adjustment. You're in a quite you know, it can be very daunting for some people because they have to work with these people. They can be your boss. So for me, it's about making sure that you're not alone. That person should be a signposter to many different resources that are useful. They should be a font of knowledge, so they can be somebody who not only signposts but to other areas, but also has knowledge of precedents that have been set elsewhere in the NHS. And that's one thing that I think a diversity leader I would like to see develop more, is those precedents. So we have students, for example, who are working in the same trust, even sometimes in the same hospital, who have one set of accommodations of using technology or software or having extra time in one placement, and they go to the next placement and they say, oh no, you can't possibly do that, that's not allowed, and the student is in quite, and also a practitioner can be in quite a difficult position where they're transitioning to a new placement where things are done differently. All this stuff has worked really well to include them, be very inclusive in the past in this placement, but isn't carried over somewhere else. Now, if you have a diversity lead who knows the hospital very well, has networked really well, goes to lots of events so you can find out what other precedents, as in what happens elsewhere, therefore it's allowed, and then can transfer that in. And that was one of the ideas we talked about, Teresa, when we first did this idea of this webinar, was about saying, actually, you can have extra time, you can have a template for handover, you can use your dictaphone, you can use your mind mapping software, you can do use your medical spell checker, you can do all these other things, have a quiet place for writing your notes, have someone to check your notes, and without making you feel that you're devoid of skill in any way. It's a recognised adjustment. And for me, that's what I would like diversity leads to do, is be that font of knowledge, because people can feel really isolated and very alone and quite powerless if they don't have a voice.
So interestingly, I've just glanced down at Twitter for 2 seconds. Sorry, Hannah. I realise we're due to come to you soon. Oh, great bus. That's fab.
think it might be a card to
Fabulous. So Fiona McQueen has tweeted, will we ever be totally inclusive and not need diversity champions? So I think that's quite an interesting question. I think I'm going to go to Paul, since he's just whizzed up his bus there. He's put himself in my line of sight. So how do you feel, Paul? Will we ever get to the stage where we don't need diversity champions, where we're totally inclusive? What do you think?
Well, my initial feelings are disappointment, because that was actually a car and not a bus, Teresa. But will we ever get to that point? I'm not sure. But the question I always pose when somebody says to me, why do we need equality leads, or why do we need equality leads, is, would you imagine having an organisation that hasn't got a finance officer? And you probably wouldn't, you know. And I put equality officers, and obviously I come from a very biased position, but I'd put equality officers in a similar role and status as finance officers, in a sense of, okay, finance officers look after the money within an organisation. I think equality officers, to a certain degree, their responsibility is to sort of look after the moral compass, should we say, or the moral climate within an organisation. And that's important both for cultural purposes in terms of the organizational culture, but there is also, you know, financial cost attached to that. So, you know, we know the costs of not being an inclusive employer, in that people won't be attracted to work for you. And again, at this presentation that I was at today, there was some really interesting data and some really interesting subsequent discussion about millennials. And millennials, when I say millennials, I'm talking about the new generation of young people coming into the workplace now. And there was a really interesting discussion about, you know, the different expectations that the new generation have got coming into the workplace. And that, you know, if we as employers, and I was there obviously representing NHS employers, if we as employers don't recognise and embrace that, then we're going to miss out on, you know, on a whole generation of people to come in who are potentially going to come into the NHS. So and that's the sort of thing that an equality officer is there to do. It's to flag up those things and to say to an organisation, you know, are you an organisation that a 18-year-old student would want to come and join and would want to work for? And, you know, have you got the sort of culture that Derek described, you know, of one that's supportive and embracing of diversity to its workforce?
So can I say there's that's a brick that you have there, Kerry. So Paul, here's in answer to that question. I think there are two answers. The first straight off answer is no, wouldn't be able to do without one. Not because of the same way as a director of finance, is actually because if we were doing everything as good and as well as we could, if we were complying with the law and following all the principles and values within that, we wouldn't need one. However, this is where I do agree with you, in actual fact, while we may have most of our workforce doing that, and I think where Kerry started off with about it's easier to do with our individual service users and our patients, but towards each other, is actually where we do need that level of support to do things. So I guess it's a disappointment to say I think we'll always need them.
Well, I think that's quite interesting, because I'm just going to put a very quick thing in here. At a recent conference with Ahead Island, which is an inclusive universal design for learning specialist, there was a set of disability practitioners in there from all walks of life, from all over the UK and Ireland. And what was really interesting is that everybody said even if we had universal design for learning, which I'll explain later, we would still need disability officers at organisations, because there are so many individual needs. And that's from disability officers who you'd think be saying, oh no, we need, you know, universal design for learning will fix everything. So universal design for learning very quickly was taken from America, from architecture, where the building suits the needs of everybody. So you don't have to bolt on a ramp, you don't have to bolt on all these extra things as reasonable adjustments to accommodate people. They are just designed in the building. It's just good function. And that is then applied through people like Cast and David Rose, which I'll tweet out later, about designing courses, designing policies that actually incorporate all needs. And that leads to Paul's idea of thought diversity. To get the policies and the organisations that are very inclusive, we need thought diversity, because, you know, I don't know everything. You know, I don't know somebody else's users' experiences. We talk a lot in the NHS about patient stories and users and client stories, and that's one of the reasons why. So I think we need to move forward, but we always need champions. We don't want ever to slip back. We always want to be moving forward.
Kerry, that's fab. I'm kind of aware that we're way past the halfway mark now, and I kind of want to move things on a little bit. It would be great, Ray, if we could go to our next Twitter poll, which actually asks about diversity and equality in social media, I think. Yeah, there it is. So do you know if the organisation you work for or study at uses social media to tell people about diversity and equality issues? So so we're kind of just hoping to bring in this social media element now.
On so this one, you can click as many as you want. So it's not one answer only.
That's fab, Ray. Thank you. So there you go. You can click as many as you like, or just one. So hopefully you're all clicking away.
So 79% voted. So a few more.
Yep. Anybody else want to vote? See if we can get more than 79%, maybe.
That's 90. That'll do.
Fab. Oh, there we go. There we are. Okay. So also that's quite interesting. So so some people are aware that that their organisation uses Twitter to tell people about diversity and equality issues, which is great. A few have no idea. Some use Facebook and other social media, and some are well aware that they don't. So again, that's a very interesting mix there. So that's fab. So I was aware before we came up on the poll that Hannah flashed up on the screen. So perhaps if we can go to Hannah now and just double check what's happening out there in Twitter land.
Hello again. So we've had a few comments and questions. I'll start with the comments first. So Summer Wilson thinks that diversity leads in organisations need to be able to promote the vision of inclusion, be a leader, and provide encouragement for others to involve and respect everyone. Sally wishes that she'd had diversity leads when she was a student, and things like spell check would have really improved her confidence. And then we've got a question from Harriet Barker. As we're using technology more in the NHS, do we think that technophobes could be a diversity issue? Is there a diversity issue around people who don't like using technology but are being forced maybe to use it? What do we think?
Wow, that's an interesting question. Clearly, I don't know the answer at all, but I can see Kerry's nodding. Thanks, Hannah. That's great. So keep the comments coming in via Twitter. I'll go to Kerry because she looks enthusiastic about this to answer Harriet's question about technophobes, and is that another kind of diverse area, maybe. I'm not quite sure. Kerry? Oh, Kerry, we can't hear you.
I would like to, I've been sneakily eating, so I've been muting so you don't hear me chomping. So yeah, I think that's a brilliant question, Harriet, and I love it, and I'm going to throw it over to Paul or Derek or Julie, because I'm confused about it.
Elements of that, well, Paul gathers his thoughts and gets something more erudite than I'm about to say. So in terms of technology and digital stuff, there are some things that we do that are not optional. Okay, so if we move towards the electronic health records and put the individual service user and patient at the centre of what we're doing, then the inevitability is we're going to use technology to support that. So 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you wouldn't have said to a nurse, look, you don't like writing, your handwriting's not very great, you can't spell very good, so don't bother keeping any nursing notes. So in the same way we're moving towards electronic health records and we have to embrace technology, the bit I think we have to do, and hopefully Paul will come into this, is how we assist people to use the technology. So we might have to use different things, whether that's spell checkers we talked about earlier, or other things that support decisions or support how we use it. Then that's where the diversity comes in. The actual using of the systems is not an option. And I don't think diversity be used to say, well, actually, because you don't like using technology, you can somehow opt out. Most of, not all, but most of our technologies are based around about the individual and the person, and electronic health records about supporting information, supporting the individual about their health and to make decisions, not just at that individual point, but at 2 in the morning or next week when they're at a different place getting care delivered. So I don't think it's an opt-out issue. Paul, over to you to disagree or come up with something brilliant.
Okay, I suppose for me, well, the first thing I'd say about social media is I'd agree with you, Derek. I do think it's certainly the future. It's certainly the way forward. It's not going to stop. I heard, I saw an article the other day which talked about, I don't know how to describe it, but they talked about it as the 4th revolution, if you like. So we've had the Industrial Revolution, and then we had the sort of the internet revolution, but now there's this 4th revolution that's being talked about, which is you've probably heard that term about the Internet of Things. So there's this phrase that's getting bandied around, so Google it if you're interested, the Internet of Things. And it's this whole idea that, as I say, the future is very much going to be virtual, computer-based, technical. And when I say technical, I think, as you say, Derek, I think the key to that is, to a certain degree, we've got to have, it's a bit of a leap of faith, but we've got to have faith that the technology will improve even beyond what it is now. And I think it is. So a few months ago, I heard a presentation from some communications people, and they told the audience that, I think it was by 2020, about 70 or 75% of the material on the internet will be video based, rather than some of the stuff that we use at the moment. Even Twitter, for example, if you look at Twitter these days, you'll see a large majority of it now is becoming much more visual, picture based and video based as well. And I think the more that we move into that sphere, then the more natural and easily accessible it's going to become for people as well. So Julie, I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I think the technology from a student point of view is a great thing. We have a lot of webinars at Plymouth, and I think for people, maybe a student that's hard of hearing, if they're sat at the back of a lecture hall, they're not going to hear very well. Or maybe somebody's not very good at, good sight, they might not be able to see PowerPoint. So something like a webinar, they can sit at home, don't have to travel 2 hours to get to university, and actually learn something without having to strain eyesight, hearing. Also, we had a brilliant chat last night about technology with Hannah and I, the student nurses. And I think Twitter especially is eliminating discrimination. It's making student nurses very diverse. I've been in contact with a student nurse that's got mental health issues. She said the best support she gets is actually from Twitter, and it's making her nursing journey a lot easier. So I think it's a great thing. It really is promoted diversity.
Thanks,
I was talking to
Julie.
Kerry was saying about some of the apps and things last night, and it is, you know, it's brilliant. It's opening up the world to people, definitely.
Julie, can I just come in?
Yeah.
Sorry. So I met this afternoon, well, this evening before I left Edinburgh, a student nurse from Manchester University. And they've got a blog, and I'll tweet it later on. But exactly what you said there, they're using social media to support each other, peer support, and blogs about that. So yeah, I think there's fabulous examples of how they're doing it. And I did say I would retweet later on and get her in touch with all of you guys, because how they promote that and then start to share that and learn is something they could do. So excellent point.
Yeah, a lot of student nurses feel isolated, so social media is opening up, you know, relationships. I've met people through Twitter and now met them in real life, and also been offered experiences in hospitals because of Twitter, which is great.
I think we're all agreeing with you there, Julie. We're all pointing to the people we've met via Twitter, and we can probably point to Twitter itself. So, so that's absolutely fine. I think what I want to do is we're coming up to the last 10 minutes of the webinar and the Twitter discussion. So perhaps for the next 5 minutes before we kind of get some final points from Hannah, I just wanted to pick up maybe on some of those leadership points and perhaps kind of tie them in a little bit with the social media aspect. So perhaps how we can kind of use social media to perhaps lead the way on diversity and inclusion issues. Does that kind of make sense? That's the sort of question I've got forming in my head. I'd quite like to go to Derek first, actually, to talk about that. Derek, do you have any thoughts on that in terms of leadership and social media and diversity?
Yeah, I think when people see now, actually, here's another thing. Just yesterday, and I'm sorry I can't remember who it was, from the Scottish Government, and I know that Fiona McQueen is on the webinar and Twitter just now, but what was tweeted was a number of senior people in the Scottish Government, led by Paul Gray, there who are on Twitter. Now, why does that matter? Actually, why it matters is because they're accessible. You can ask them questions, you can get things from them, and so at the very heart of decision making, if you've got an issue you want to flag up. And we also know that some of our politicians, it's the First Minister, for example, is on Twitter, accessible. We can get to these people and ask them questions. And what I tweeted earlier tonight on the way back was related to a nurse consultant in Ayrshire who tweeted Hazel Borland and I, and we were talking about research stuff, and I said, be careful what you wish for, because now she's flagged up the issue. Guess what? We're going to get her involved in things. So yeah, it's that leadership to say it's all right to do this. But let's go back to the very beginning of this, where Teresa mentioned the NMC code and professionalism online. So you put those two things together, and what you've got, leaders showing that it's safe to do it, but with it comes a professionalism, a digital professionalism, and we should embrace that. But because if you look at the leaders, you go, hey, it's all right to do this. And I think that's really important. So I think that's the bit, it's a role modelling aspect, and then the demonstrating what is safe. So Kerry, you'll know, because I sometimes tweet about non-work things. Did I mention a certain Scottish tea cake?
Can we just say Tunnocks so we just get sponsored? I think we should just do that. And they need a gluten-free version, Tunnocks.
Yes, see, I guess what you get there is you get me as a leader, you get me as a person, and you get to see, well, actually it's all right, it's safe to do those things. And it's the same with a number of other leaders, including those that were in that list. And I will retweet it again after this tonight so that other people can see these senior figures at Scottish Government civil service level who are engaging widely with people. I think that's really important. And of course, Paul's a prime example of that, being a very senior person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And can I just quickly interject with the Salford Twitter account? I think that's a massively brilliant example of leadership, where the Salford lecturers have handed over curation of the nursing Salford tweeting whatever that's called. Do you know what I'm saying? You know, they're the people who are running the Twitter for the nursing account, and each week they say, okay, we're asking somebody else to do it this week, come on students, what do you want to do? So that's a fantastic example of leadership, and also, you know, empowerment. What do you think, Paul?
Okay, I absolutely agree with what Derek's saying.
They're doing it now as well, so.
As I say, I absolutely agree with what Derek's saying. I want to build on that as well. I want to pick up a word that Kerry used earlier that we haven't said much about, which was empathy. And that builds a bit on what Julie was talking about as well. Because again, I mean, I'm not an academic and I'm only quoting other people, but I've heard researchers talk about the evidence, and there is evidence to show that people who are more active on social media, because of that wider experience that Julie was talking about and that wider exposure that people get through social media, they're actually more empathetic. And in terms of leadership, if we can have leaders who are more empathetic, then they'll be better leaders. It's gone quiet.
Sorry, for some reason my webcam isn't working, but Ray's flashing up the Punk account, so we definitely need to mention Punks too. Again, another really great example of kind of leading within this space. You know, the Punks and the Salford University lot are doing an amazing job. I just want to kind of, I've seen
students as well.
we could go on, couldn't we? So I'm just aware that now it's kind of 8 to 9. You'll all be pleased to know. We feel like you've been under the spotlight for nearly an hour now. You've done ever so well. But Hannah's popped up, so I just wanted to go to Hannah just to perhaps get some final thoughts from Twitter. So Hannah, what's going on out there?
Hello again. Well, people are kind of summing up, I think, the thoughts from the whole chat. So we've had quite a few different comments. Some people are talking about the social media aspects and how that does break down barriers. There's a lot of agreement with what everyone's been saying. One lady called Emma has talked about the positives of diversity. That's what we need to be looking at. So these differences that are between people are positives, and that's the way that leaders need to be looking at them to influence the rest of us to see them the same way. And she also said that a good leader to her would be someone that brings these differences together and kind of makes them appear to be blended rather than being different, if that makes sense. So I found that was a really good comment. Yeah, I just on the Salford thing, I wanted to pick up on that. I curated the Salford account, and it is a really great experience. It just encourages you to make connections, and like we've said, it builds your empathy because you're talking to all these different people and things. It's really good. I really enjoyed it, and I've been telling everyone that on my course that they need to do it as well. So, yeah.
Thanks, Hannah. That's fab, and I love the way you got the advert in there for the Salford University account, which is great. So really, kind of, I suppose, just to sum up, I'm going to come to each of you in turn, just to perhaps give me some final thoughts, and because we're talking social media here, I really want your thoughts in terms of social media and diversity, and perhaps, you know, how social media can help inclusion. But it has to be very succinct because we've got 2 minutes. So by my reckoning, that's about 10 seconds each. So I'm going to go to Kerry first, who's up here, who's wafting something at us. So.
Okay, I was going to hold that up so you didn't have to come to me. So so I wrote a few notes about that. So the role of social media in supporting diversity as an awareness tool, as a confidence so people feel they're not alone, like Julie was talking about, signposting to key resources like diverse nurses that we did, which Teresa did a vlog for, talking about, you know, it's a good thing that you're a diverse nurse, and the fact you can reach a lot of people. There you go.
Thanks, Kerry. Thanks, Kerry. That's fab. I'm going to go to Julie next because it's like celebrity. What was it called? Celebrity boxes. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to go to Julie.
Well, I think that through social media we can just reach out to everybody so easily. It's, you know, no matter if they're disabled or, you know, anywhere in the world, we can just reach out to break down barriers, basically.
Thanks, Julie. That's fab. Paul is next on my list. So Paul, what are your thoughts?
Okay, I'm sorry, I was I get distracted. So celebrity boxes was Bob Monkhouse, yeah. So I've just googled Bob Monkhouse, and I'm just going to read one of his quotes. So it says, "Growing old is compulsory. Growing up is optional." You can laugh, yeah. Okay.
I would agree with that one.
Thanks, Paul.
It's very quick, and I've done another visual. So this was inspired by the previous conversation that Hannah was talking about. So yin and yang, yeah, and then that's the difference in the middle. So somebody on Twitter was talking about, you know, blending the difference. Was that the phrase they used? So you've got yin and yang, and that different bit in the middle, and that's what it's all about, really. It's that bit in the middle for me.
Thanks, Paul. And then this way we're going to Derek. So Derek, your final thoughts.
Okay, final thoughts. Look at the people who took part in the chat tonight. Okay, so you want to know about diversity. So we've got Superintendent Kevin Purcell, who's been tweeting about what we've been doing. We've got Andy, and that's, so we've got the police. I wrote down, we've got Andy from catering and hospital catering services. We've got nurses, we've got students, we've got people from the north of Scotland, we've got people from the south of England. So there, in a nutshell, without me going on it, is actually just look at the diversity of the people who've been on, sharing their thoughts, sharing their knowledge, and go, there's where social media steps in. And look at the fab students we've had on, and both accounts from Salford and Plymouth, and now the Manchester one that I did say I would plug again for them.
Okay, that's absolutely wonderful. I think we're going to tie things up now. I believe we've got one last poll. Is that right, Ray? I'm just looking at my notes, which I can't find the last poll, so hopefully it will flash up. Oh, here we go. So it's really just a little evaluation. So how useful has this webinar been to you? If too many of you put meh, then we might all cry. But don't let that influence you in any way.
Be kind, please.
So hopefully you're all voting.
That's 86% voted. That'll do. So there we are.
Okay. Yay! Fabulously useful, and nobody put there. Thank God for that. Okay. So I think the
Not
only
that we
thing
may
that's
bias those results.
the only thing that's left for me to say is to say thank you to the wonderful team this evening. So thank you very much, Paul Deemer, for joining us. Julie Woolman, thank you very, very much. Kerry Pace, thank you. Derek Barron, thank you very much. Hannah, thank you for manning Twitter. That's absolutely amazing. And can we have a big round of applause for Ray as well, who is in the background, making sure that everything works the way it's supposed to, and for Nick, who's been kind of doing a bit of thing.
And of course, Teresa, a round of applause for our chair as well. Teresa, thank you very much.
Thank you.
What are we doing this next?
Well, I'd like to kind of perhaps part on the whole Celebrity Squares thing, and yeah, maybe next time we can get out some music for Celebrity Squares. So thank you all for joining us this evening via Twitter, via this webinar, and we hope to see you all again soon. So thank you. Bye bye.